Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I'm just turning you up.
Yeah, yeah, good. I feel like we have known each other virtually for a while now, so it's so nice to, talk to you in person.
Yeah, I was thinking the same things. It's been about 2 years or two, maybe even longer than that. When my last book came out, you were so supportive, and I just thought of all the
Yeah,
people that I would like to chat to.
yeah. No, I adored the previous novels that I've read of yours, and I just recently finished Only Love Can Hurt Like This and loved it. So I'm excited to chat with you about it. And I didn't know if you wanted to maybe give a little bit of a background of the book to some of the readers who maybe not have read it yet or are thinking about reading it.
Sure, that's a good idea. So yes, I've got a copy here too. This is the American edition, and for British readers tuning in, this is the British edition. It's the story of Wren, who at the beginning of the novel, she witnesses the moment that her fiance realizes that he's in love with somebody else. And it's just this look that they share, but it's like when your intuition is really telling you that there's something more there that she doesn't know about. And 3 months later, we pick up with her again, and she's on her way to Indiana to go and stay with her dad and stepfamily in Indiana. And she's sort of still getting over her heartbreak, but she's also kind of starting to move out of the other side. And she meets this very hot man, Anders, in the middle of sort of these sort of cornfields with fireflies, and sort of this gorgeous picturesque setting, and bumps into him, but he keeps her at arm's length. It's a real slow burn, this story. Like, it's my slowest burn novel that I've ever written. But there's a reason that he keeps her at arm's length. And, sort of later on in the novel, you find out why. There's a whopping great twist that, it was quite fun to write. But yeah.
Yes, yes. I messaged you right when I got to that point, and I was shocked. I did not see it coming, and it was a very emotional journey. It's funny because you hear about books that are going to be emotional, and you're interested to see what that means. And when you think, oh, it's not going to be that bad. I can handle it. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
my heart. Okay, but and speaking of Anders, I loved him as a character and as a hero. He was just fabulous. My heart, I adored him and the setting. And I just wanted to know, did you have any inspiration when it came to Anders or any of the characters in general in the book?
Not really, like not from real people. Like I rarely sort of envisage real people. I just remember sort of, he's got quite sort of sharp eyebrows, like just really striking eyes. There was like someone on the Great British Bake Off who had this flaw, and it was a girl actually. She had like this amber kind of flaw in her eyes, and I found that quite intriguing. So that's like something that he has. But most of the time, they're figments of my imagination. Like, they look so real inside my head. All of my characters, I find it really hard to kind of even, I can never tell anyone. If my books are ever made into a movie and someone said to me, who would you want to cast? I'd be like, I have no idea. Like
Yeah.
they look too fictional inside my head.
Yeah, but I kind of like that too. It really leaves the reader up to their own imagination to envision the character how they would like.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, that's what you hope. And I feel like the same when I'm reading other people's books, and then you see it on the bigger screen. You're like, oh, okay. But actually, like, it's interesting, isn't it? It is interesting to see characters brought to life. What they bring to the role, and
Yeah,
whether or not they look anything like you'd imagined.
yeah. I completely agree. And I know that and I know at least the American version, I don't know about the British version, you did go into a little bit of detail into the story a little more with the Q&A. So this might be a little redundant for those readers that may have gotten to the back, but I wanted to know if you can, without giving away spoilers, what inspired you to write this book? I know it is a little bit different than some of your others. It's set in Indiana.
Yeah.
And it's on a farm, so it's a little bit different than some of the ones you've written in the past.
Sure. Well, actually, so initially I was thinking about, I wanted to set a book on a farm. I had an idea for setting a book on a farm. I also sort of, probably around the same time, imagined writing a book called Only Love Can Hurt Like This, because I love that song, and I sort of thought that would really, really work with, with a novel of mine. when I actually lived in Indianapolis for a little while, when I was both a really young child and in my 20s for a short while. My dad used to be an IndyCar driver, and so he was like, he drove the Indy 500. And then later, when I was in my 20s, he ran an Indy Lights team out of Indianapolis. And he and my mum lived in the real Silk Lofts where Anders lives. You know, that apartment is all of the places in Indianapolis are all real, you know, places I used to love going to when I was there. And so when I had this idea about this setting this book on a farm, and I wanted it to be like a family farm, and this sense of duty of this family having, you know, like being the oldest brother and having the farm passed down to you, and feeling that responsibility of being able to pass on this family legacy. And that's like Anders' brother Jonas. He has some struggles with his mental health, and he's actually the farmer and that's the reason Anders is home for the summer, because Anders works as a race engineer for an IndyCar team. So I was able to sort of write that in. But when I was living in Indianapolis, we basically did an activity, which I won't talk about because it's a slight spoiler. And I heard about this situation that had happened, and it was horrific. And then a few years ago, I heard about a similar thing happening, actually to a friend of a friend. And I could not imagine a worse hell for the people involved. Like, it was just so difficult. And then so the actual twist is where the main idea, all of these other ideas, you know, deciding to set it on a farm, and actually deciding to set the farm in Indiana because it was a place I hadn't written about before, even though I'd lived there. It just all sort of fit, you know. And then with the storyline, Only Love Can Hurt Like This, you know, all of those elements, you know, I just kept coming back to those. You know, it's with Ren and her fiance, with Ren and Anders, with Ren and her dad, you know, because she's sort of a little bit estranged from her dad, you know, she grew up in England, he grew up, you know, he was in America, and he basically chose his second family as his first choice. And so it was just all of just trying to sort of always come back to the title and, you know, have that theme play through.
Yeah.
Lots of different ideas rolled into one.
Yeah, I loved too that it's not, in my opinion, just a romance. I mean, at its core, it's a romance, but there are so many other elements that are a part of this book. You know, you have two different sibling relationships you're looking at. You're looking at a father-daughter relationship and a community-found family almost. And I personally really enjoyed that. And I think it makes it feel not as formulaic as some romances, you know, can start to feel after a while. So it's something that I really appreciated. And then obviously I'm a big sports romance girl, and I didn't realize that there was going to be any, I mean, not that, I guess technically it's IndyCar racing isn't a sport, but maybe not traditionally. So I thought that aspect was so much fun. When I got to it, I was pleasantly surprised.
Oh, that's cool. You haven't, I don't think you've read Chasing Daisy yet, my third novel, but that's all set in the world of racing.
No,
Might be, I'll have to send you that one.
I was going to say, you have what, like 22, 25 novels?
Yeah, 20 novels, okay. Yeah.
Well, that's still, that's a lot. It's impressive.
Yeah,
so
I've been a busy girl for the last 16 years.
You have been. And I just want to know too about the book. What was your favorite scene to write about? Was it in Indianapolis on the farm? Or do you have any scenes that you kind of reflect back on?
It's always the love scenes for me. Like, those are the ones that I just can't wait to write. You know, it's the moment when things actually start to happen. I couldn't wait to write the twist. Like, I was really so excited to sort of be able to start writing that, because I've thought about that so much. And then it's the moment, you know, where they finally kind of like give in to, you know, all of their feelings and sort of take things a step further. And then I can really kind of, you know, because it was such a slow burn as well, you know, I was just like dying to get to that moment, you know, so I could really let them see what was, you know, what was out there with each other. But yeah, those are the two moments. It's always the love story for me, you know. That's always the bit that I just can't wait to write. You know, I'll have these sort of certain key scenes going through each book, and you know, I'll just be like gearing up until then, and you know, writing in sequence, just so I've always got something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I love romance. I'm a romance girl at heart, so I always gravitate towards those scenes as well. And I agree, it was a slow burn, but it is worth it when you get there. And then when you get to the end, it's like you fly through it.
That's good. Well, I tell you, if you don't want a slow burn, wait till 7 Summers, because that one next year's read, like, that is just I don't think I've ever fancied two leading men more in my life. You know, like they're just so, both of them are so strong, you know, and it's a love triangle. So you're kind of like really, really torn, I think, between the two of them. So that's just like chemistry,
Yeah.
and sort of told over 7 summers. And it's just like, you know, every year there's some new element to the story. So yeah, I can't wait for everyone to be able to read that one.
It's funny. I was going to bring it up because I know you just talked about it the other day, right? On your Instagram, announced that you were writing it, or that you were going to be releasing it next summer. And I'm super excited. I feel like love triangles are kind of an unpopular opinion to love, but I personally love them. I feel like it creates a lot of angst and a lot of back and forth and what's going to happen and a lot of drama. So I'm super excited for that one. And I love a summer setting. So I feel like this book sounds right up my alley. Is there anything else that you can tell us about it?
Well, the funny thing is, like, even though it is a love triangle, like there are 3 people involved, but there's no cheating or anything, because it's a story of Liv, who, you know, she's home for the summer, she's 22, and there's this guy playing in the band, like the local band, on the bar on the beach where she's working for the summer, and that's Finn. And there's just so much chemistry between them, and they both really, really like each other. She's like, I'll wait till his last night before anything happens. I don't want any, you know, I don't want it to be messy. And then something happens on the last night which just changes her life forever, and he's part of that. So over the next 6 summers, he comes back year after year. They have this agreement, you know, I won't wait for you. In fact, I'll just tell you this quickly because we'll come back to maybe talking about Taylor Swift. But, you know, 'Tis the Damn Season by Taylor Swift, it was slightly like inspired this novel. It's like, I won't ask you to wait if you don't ask me to stay. So they kind of like have this pact that, you know, year after year, he'll come back. If they're both single, then they'll you know, have this relationship. And so, and then in the meantime, woven into that story is this summer, where Liv is very single, very much single. Like Finn, you know, has moved on, and she meets and falls in love with Tom, who's this mysterious new guy in town. He's only there for a month, allegedly. And he draws sand art, you know, on the beach. And she sort of, in the opening chapter, she's really fixated on finding out who is this mysterious sand artist. She's an artist herself. And so so you know that you're kind of gearing up to the point, you know, meanwhile, all of the story about Liv and Finn is unfolding, and then you're just gearing up to the point where you just know Finn will come back that summer, and she'll have to make a choice between someone who she has all this history with and this new love, you know, whether or not to go in this different direction. And it's just, that this book absolutely broke me. Like, I ended up going live on Instagram.
I don't even know. Okay. I'm so excited for it already, and I hate that we're going to have to wait a whole year, but
you won't have to. I'll make sure you get like an early proof copy. Like I'm dying to sort of like know what some of my favorite bookstagrammers think of this one. I can't wait a year. You know, I'm just copy editing it now, so we'll have proof copies pretty soon, I think. So for some very, very lucky people, I think they'll get to have an earlier look.
I cannot wait. It sounds amazing. And I didn't realize that you were a Taylor Swift fan, so I need to know, were there any songs that you felt like paired well with this book, or maybe you drew inspiration from?
For Only Love Can Hurt Like This?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yes, there. In fact, I've done a playlist, which is on my Instagram at Paige Toon Author. If anyone wants to check it out, it's like my American publisher, you know, put it together for me, and it's on Spotify. Obviously, Only Love Can Hurt Like This, you know, the title is a big one for me. But there are other ones that really, really inspired certain scenes. You know, like I was listening to Sam Fender quite a lot at the time, and there's this one song, Play God, and I just remember that kind of unlocked Anders for me. You know, it was this really kind of, you know, just a cool beat, you know, in the background. And there's this, like, Anders, basically, she bumps into him, and then he goes home again. You know, he's there just to sort of check on his brother, and then he goes back to Indianapolis. And then something else happens that brings him back to the farm, and he's just sitting there on the steps outside his farmhouse with his head in his hands. And, you know, he looks up and sees her, and he's just like, you're still here, because she was also supposed to go back to the UK, and she stayed. And so just this moment, I just remember sort of listening to this song and just really imagining, you know, so Play God by Sam Fender, I think that's a good one. Okay. And also I listened to 17 Going Under by Sam Fender a lot when I was writing this book. You know, for some reason it brought out kind of all the angst and, you know, all the feelings that I wanted to try and convey.
Yeah, I love listening to playlist. I didn't realize that you had posted one, so after this I'm running to go listen to that playlist. But I love pairing music with books, and I feel like it really can like make the whole vibe come together. And I love it when authors draw inspiration from music. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I really, I mean, I listen to a lot of Taylor Swift, you know, when I'm writing. Like, her lyrics are just so inspirational, you know. I'm always sort of like picking up. So it is the damn season for 7 summers, but also like 22 is written into the book for 7 summers, you know, like it's a song that, you know, that is really reminiscent. She's sort of thinking about it a lot because she's 22, you know, at the start of the book. Yeah, so, you know, that's where I get a lot of my inspiration for books, is from songs. You know, I'll just be walking and listening to music, and I'll just hear a lyric, and The Nicest Thing by Kate Nash. That's another really, really powerful one for me, for Only Love Can Hurt Like This. I remember listening to The Nicest Thing by Kate Nash, and she's sort of talking about, you know, it's just this angst, this sort of, this tortured sort of unrequited love. She just is so in love with this man, you know, this boy, and she just wants him to love her back, and he, you know, he barely even notices her, you know, but she's sort of just saying, I wish, you know, you could have spot this. And it's a great, I actually sort of wrote a line into the book, which anyone who knows that song will probably spot it when you come across it.
Oh, that's so much fun. I love it when authors put those little Easter eggs in there for us to find.
Yeah.
After you wrote this book, did you reflect back and think, like, was there anything that you learned while writing it that was maybe something that you haven't come across in the past? And maybe it could have been about the story specifically, or maybe it could have been about the writing process. Was there any takeaways?
I learn something new every single time I write a book. Considering I've written 20, I'll always be doing something different. One year that I think, oh, that worked well, you know, I must do that again next year, and then the next year I'll do something completely different. So I'm always doing stuff like that. I think the only thing that surprised me really about the writing process of this is when I got to a point where you find out the twist, and I still hadn't fully kind of like, I hadn't fallen apart emotionally, you know. And I usually, if there's something really, really heartbreaking, I'm in floods of tears, and I wasn't. And that was the moment that I decided to switch perspective, you know. And that's a little bit of a spoiler, but basically writing from somebody else's perspective, and when you could really see what had been going on in their life and this awful decision that they had to make, and just the heartbreak of the other people involved, I was writing that chapter sobbing, you know. So, you know, that's like, you know, that's the only thing that was just like a surprise to me, because I didn't know I was going to do that until I was literally right there. And then I just realized that was what the book needed. So I usually I don't plan them out, but I've just got them in my head. So I know exactly what I'm going to be writing from beginning to end. I'll have all these key scenes that I've just daydreamed about for, you know, months and months. And I'm just sort of veering up to sort of get to them. But I don't do any plan or anything, you know, I never sort of have a plan.
Right. Well, I know that when the perspective does switch, I loved it, and it was more emotional, and I think it created a bigger impact. So I was so happy that you did that. And it was a big surprise for me as well. I wasn't expecting that. So it was fun.
Oh, that's cool. I tell you, the audiobook edition, they have a male actor who plays that part. And Gemma Whelan, who was in Game of Thrones, I don't know if you ever watched Game of Thrones, she narrates Ren, and she does such a beautiful job. And then, yeah, the guy who does Anders, you know, just hearing this sort of guy, like, with his authentic American accent, you know, he's actually an American actor, you know, doing Anders is just so, it's quite amazing, really, you know, because I've never had any of my books made into a film, but an audiobook is kind of like a step in, you know, when somebody else is reading your words and putting their own spin on them and intonating certain things that you maybe would have done differently. Is unusual. But I was just listening to it, just thinking, oh, you know, this Anders sounds really hot.
Yeah. So I actually read the physical copy for the most part, but I listened to some of the audiobook. I love audiobook. So I actually listened to that part on audio. I got to hear both voice actors, and he did a phenomenal job. Oh, phenomenal. I loved it. And it was a surprise. I'm sitting here doing dishes or whatever, and I'm like, wait, what? We switched here. And then I was just excited, even more engaged into the story. So it was great.
Oh, that's cool. That's good. That's really good feedback. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess too, I'm curious, maybe this is this is a little outside of, you know, what you're currently, like your current books that you're have written or are writing about, but what books are you currently reading right now?
Well, I'm currently reading Seven Summers, which is, I've read it so many times, but I actually have to reread it again because I've just copy edited it. And I just want to have a read through with just a completely fresh perspective, you know, make sure everything reads, you know, fluently and, you know, there aren't any mistakes and stuff. So that's the one I'm reading right now. But the one that I've just finished reading the same time next year by Annabelle Monaghan. And I absolutely loved it. Like, I loved Nora Goes Off Script. Have you read either of hers?
I haven't. I have heard great things, and I've almost picked. I need to. I've heard great things.
Yeah, she's just like, I mean, it's just totally my style. Like, when I started reading Nora Goes Off Script, it was just, oh, just really felt like the book that I wanted to read. Just this completely fantasy sort of world of this Hollywood actor just rocking up at your house to film a scene there and then actually not leaving. And just sort of slotting into your household with your kids, you know. It's just like one of those brilliant books that you just feel the chemistry, and, you know, I just loved it. I raced through it. I don't think I've ever read a book in a day before, but I did. I sort of started reading it in the afternoon and finished it at midnight, you know, so yeah, thoroughly recommend that. And her new one's just come out as well, and that's also really, really good.
I know, I feel like I'm seeing both of them
What would you recommend? Because I've got like a few lined up on my Kindle. I've had to read books for, you know, I've had some to read for friends, so I haven't been able to read like the books that have been on my Kindle, but I can't wait to read Christina Lauren's next one. You know, that's like the next one that I can't wait to read.
Yes.
And I've got a few.
That one and Ashley Poston's new book. I can't think of it. The 7-Year Slip. Both of those are on my TBR for romance. I've been randomly reading a lot of thrillers lately. So thriller kick. I'm currently reading Drowning, and that one is fabulous, by someone in the comments. Let me know. T something. I can't think of her name, and I don't have the book in front of me, but it's very good.
Okay, cool.
And then yes, I'll message you too. They're great. It was like, you cannot put it down. A lot of anxiety. You're just like racing through the pages. It's very compelling read. And then I just read The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth, which is a fun thriller, suspense. There is some romance in there. Perfect for the summer.
That's
so yeah, those are two that I've recently enjoyed, and then I'm excited about The 7-Year Slip, and I'm excited for this new Christina Lauren book.
Yeah, I can't wait to read those. I actually still haven't read Carly Fortune, Summer Ever After, so I've got that loaded up on my Kindle for this summer. Oh. I know.
No,
I'm not the only person on Instagram.
Drop everything and read every Summer After. It is fabulous. It is so good. I love that book. I feel like I've pushed it on so many people, but it is great. You should definitely read that one.
I will.
And I know that you obviously, I haven't read all of your books, but I'm going to assume that most of them are more of that emotional romance or angsty kind of romance books.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what book has made you cry the most while writing or coming up with a story? Like, what's been the most emotional book for you?
5 Years From Now, or Seven Summers, which comes out, you know, in April. 5 Years From Now, I remember sort of thinking about have you read that one? Because I'll send that one to you. Well, in fact, it's coming out in the States. Did you know, because I have a new US publisher now, Putnam, and so they're releasing 4 of my backlist titles, including 5 Years From Now, but that's coming out in November in paperback. So that you'll start to see my books in the shops, which would be fantastic. I'm really excited. So 5 Years From Now in November, hopefully I'll wait until, you know, they have copies ready, and I'll make sure they get one to you. But that's a book which is told every 5 years, and, you know, my characters, they meet when they're 5 years old, and then, you know, we pick up with them again when they're 10, and then at 10 something happens that basically puts them in other sides of the world, and at 15 when they meet up again, you know, there's chemistry there, and so it's every 5 years, and it's told up until the age of when they're about 40. And so I was just so invested, but I just kept trying to think of a way of how they could realistically be together, because something happens to them both. You know, they both have kids, and they're on other sides of the world, and they can't leave their children behind, even though they're no longer with the partners. And it was just the most heartbreaking story to write, to try and work out a way of how they could realistically, because realism is really, really important to me. And I think when I realized how that book would end, I just burst into tears. I was just like, you know, that was well before I even started writing it. But the funny thing with Seven Summers, you know, next year's book, is that I actually told both my British and my American editor the story, and I just sort of told them from beginning to end, and they were both crying by the end too. So it's like, so yeah, you know, I can barely even talk about this book now without, you know, like getting emotional. Like it's full on. But I also, you know, I had to read this like sort of 7 times before it came out with all of the different edits and stuff, and that made me cry every single time, you know. So I don't know why I do it to myself, frankly, Rachel. It's it's exhausting being me.
I'm a reader, do it to myself too, and I'm recommending people. I'm like, books that are gonna rip your heart out.
Yeah, you want a book to rip your heart out and then piece it back together again. Like I actually hate reading sad novels. I don't want to read a novel that's going to leave me with like a really, you know, feeling absolutely miserable. Sometimes I want that. Sometimes I crave that. And when I don't crave it, like I wouldn't read it if I knew in advance that it was going to make me feel like that. But then those are the ones that really stay with you, you know, like The Idea of You, you know, Robin Lee's book. You know, I just remember sort of like couldn't stop thinking about that for so long afterwards, you know.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
5 years ago, was a bit like that.
This controversial ending right there.
Yeah.
I'm
it's like
excited to see the film adaptation for it.
Oh God, I can't wait. Yeah, Daisy Jones and the Six was a fantastic film adaptation. What about that one? That was just in terms of film adaptations, such a good one.
Yeah. It was a great one. Okay, well, if you had to pick, speaking of film adaptations, if you had to pick one of your books that you would like to see go to film, or the big screen, the small screen, whatever that is, which one would you like to see first?
I think maybe Only Love Can Hurt Like That, because, you know, that's the one that is just kind of out and, you know, about the moment. I like the British-American link, you know, so I think probably that one. But my second book, Johnny Be Good, is like a book about this girl who goes to work for a rock star in LA, and she's just an ordinary girl, and she's his PA, and he's just like such a horrible bad boy rock star, but he's just so, you know, attractive. And I ended up writing like 5 books in that series, and I think they would make a brilliant Netflix series. Like I'd love to see them on the big screen one day, because there's so much material, you know, like for the family itself, you know, what happens to them all, you know, as they go through the years. So yeah, that'd be a fun one.
I did have someone ask if you were going to continue. I haven't read that series. It's on my list, but if you were going to continue that series, are you going to pick up any of your previous books and run with them in the future?
Never say never. You know, like I've got so many ideas. Like I already have my idea that I'm working on for 2025. I had to think about that for a minute. But, you know, like they're all still very real to me, you know, like I imagine my characters living in like this parallel universe somewhere out there, and I can kind of like tell you what they're doing, you know, at any one time. So the Jefferson family, you know, Johnny, funnily enough, there's a tiny link to Seven Summers, which readers will spot. And it occurred to me just a couple of months ago that I could write a little mini story, which brings in one of the characters from Seven Summers, and, you know, he would get a mention too. So that's something that I'd like to do, and it's just something when I feel like I've got a little bit more time on my hands, you know, I would love to write more mini stories which kind of like, you know, bring the whole worlds together, and, you know, just to put them on my, you know, hidden page. I've got a newsletter, you know, via PaigeToon.com if anyone's interested, you know, but I do sort of write little mini short stories sometimes, and I can imagine doing that one day. I'd like to do that with maybe Jonas, you know, like maybe give him a little mini story, or write something from his perspective.
I love that, and I love the Easter eggs in stories, you know, when authors include characters from the past because they're all in the same universe. It is so cool and fun to me as a reader to spot something and know that that's from another book. I find it really special. Yeah,
I love that too. I love it when I'm reading, and I just love these sort of things, because, you know, then you know that if the characters feel so real to me, and I know they feel really real to my readers too. And you know that if another author, you know, writes in a cameo, then you know how real, you know, those characters feel to that author too. You know, they probably, you know, I can barely believe that they're not actually out there existing somewhere. Like they literally feel so kind of, you know, lifelike.
Yeah. Well, amazing. I think that's all of my questions that I have. I really appreciate you sitting down and chatting with me and everyone. Please let us know where we can find Only Love Can Hurt Like This. Are there specific stores Target is recently selling?
Yes, it's just gone live in a big book promotion in Target, which is, so it should be in all Targets across America. And Costco from the 3rd of July, they've got something like 20,000 copies going out on tables, so it's a, crazy amount. And they're in Barnes and Noble and loads of independent bookshops. If you see it on the shelves, please take a picture, tag me at Paige Toon author, and maybe the store too, and I can repost the story. It's just so lovely to see the amount of support that independent bookshops have been giving it. I've seen it facing outwards on so many aisles, and yeah, it's just incredible. It's been such a long time coming, but it's so good to see it in America at last.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. You can follow us both on Instagram, and cheers to you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rachel. It's been so nice to meet you and talk to you properly.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks everyone for joining in.
Bye.
Bye.